looking back, I didn't realize how much of a depression I actually went into for a full year, that I really just existed and went on bare minimum. For me, I shut down. For me, it's a shutdown. Like, I don't want to get out of bed. I really just existed I was a zombie. I really just became the zombie of, I had to function. I had 3 boys who relied on me. I was trying to run a business, do all the things. But I did seek out, I went to, a hospice, lose your parent counseling thing. I sought out therapy. I did a lot of that, but it still just became this existence for a year.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Flip That Shit. My name is Stacey Uhrig, and my guest today is Sheri Miter. I'm really excited to have Sheri on. For those of you who are new to the podcast, just a really quick recap. This is all about meeting people for the first time and recognizing that everyone has a story. Everybody's had some sort of struggle in their life, likely multiple struggles. And it's really important for people to understand that life is a series of experiences that are divinely designed for us. We're kind of indoctrinated to believe that we shouldn't have bad experiences. And if we do, there's something wrong with us. But if you really truly embody the idea that life is a series of experiences, you can say challenges, divinely designed for us, you're not going to be running away from them all the time. You're going to be leaning into them. Too often people are told life should be easy, life should be good. When we have a problem, that means that there's something wrong. And also not to share our problems with other people, which leads to deep isolation, deep grief, and it can often lead to depression. And so one of my goals with this podcast is to kind of interview random people. I've met Sheri once, only for like 20 minutes when we did a little pre-podcast powwow, but I really don't know her that well. But that's kind of the point of it, because I don't know her that well, but I know she's going to have had a struggle. And if one person listens to the interview today and can resonate with what her struggle is, and that person on the listening end has been sitting in isolation, maybe some shame, some depression because they haven't been able to connect in their challenge, maybe this will just give them the inspiration and the courage to share their truth with just one person and kind of step out of that shadow of disconnect, right? So that's kind of my mission with this podcast. Let me tell you a little bit about Sheri. Sheri was tired of seeing too many amazing people not using their natural talents and settling for mediocrity in life. She's on a mission to help people unleash their strengths and discover their calling. She believes that when you know and find your purpose in life and pursue it, with bold faith and with excellence, fulfillment, joy, and success will always follow. When Sheri's not using her talents as a Gallup-certified strengths coach, you can find her off on adventures with her husband or relishing time with her growing family. Hi, Sheri. How are you?
Hi, Stacey. Thank you for having me on the show. I love your mission.
Thank you so much. I'm really passionate about it. And, as a trauma recovery coach, I do see a lot of anxiety, a lot of disconnect, a lot of depression, and a lot of shame. And a lot of it's because we've grown up kind of told when things are bad, like, don't burden other people, right? Don't share that stuff. Nobody really wants to hear it. Don't air our dirty laundry. And so we're left to cope on our own. And I really want to try to stop that stigma. And I'm hoping that this podcast can be a part of that. So you and I have had some really interesting conversations in the back end. And one of the things that I know connected us is the fact that we were both fairly successful with network marketing. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. But when I asked you what your unique life story was, what was the challenge that kind of shifted everything for you? Because we've all had many challenges in life, but there's always that one that literally stops us in our tracks and brings us to our knees and has a pivotal change in life. And for you, it was losing your mom when she was only 58 You were 36, so young, and how that affected your entire outlook on life now, which is this concept of life is short, let's not wait. And during that same period of time, your husband had been deployed twice based on 9/11 related incidences. So tell me a little bit about that, just as a backstory. You were working, your mom was diagnosed, your husband was getting deployed. What did that look like? How young were your kids at that time, and what was life like?
Yeah. So it was this whole, like, I don't even know. I am so bad with dates. So if I
Time's
throw
a
a date
construct,
out,
my friend. We don't need the date.
No, I always go back and I always get dates wrong. And my husband's always like, that happened like 5 years ago or 20 years ago. But it was a whole season of probably 3 or 4 years really for us. And I was, like I said, in my 30s, mid 30s. I got married very young. I was 19 when I got married, 20 when I started having babies. We had 3 boys. So they were preteen teens at this time. I was building my direct sales business. My husband's a professional firefighter, just retired. So he's, busy with his career. And, life was pretty good for us and no big complaints. We're just going on with our life. And then we live in upstate New York. And as I shared, my husband's a professional firefighter. He was also in the Air National Guard at the time. And when 9/11 happened, that affected us. We didn't know a lot of people. He knew a few people. I knew of some people that knew some people. It wasn't so much that it was personal of who we lost, but it was just, he's a firefighter.
Yeah.
He's in the military. Like, it just shook our world. And so, that happened. That just became this cloud over us of, we knew he was going to get deployed. We just didn't know when. And he eventually got deployed 9/11, obviously in September, that summer, that next spring, summer, he got deployed for 6 months. And we can go back now and look back and put all the puzzle pieces neatly together. But back then it's like, trying to put a puzzle together without the box that shows you the picture.
I say that all the time. You don't know what the picture is, but you've been handed a ton of pieces and you're supposed to do something with it.
Yes. And interestingly enough, when he was deployed that summer, because I was, doing well with my network marketing business, I hired like this fabulous secretary for myself. And this is a piece of the story that, like, all the pieces eventually fit. We just don't know how. And she saved me. She saved me because, my boys were very active in sports. It was just a very busy summer and a lot of choices of, oh, we can do this, we can't do this. And, just all the things that were happening, with him being gone, me trying to raise these 3 boys and keep life afloat. And we did. So he came back that late summer, early fall. In October, I got a phone call from my mom. She lived my dad and her lived in Kansas at the time, which is where she was from, saying she'd been diagnosed with cancer. We had known something. They had came to visit during the summer, and she was sharing with me that something was off. She knew something was off with her body, and that diagnosis came. I immediately flew out there. I'm very close to my mom. I have one sister. We're all very tight and close. Flew out there, spent time with her during the diagnosis period. And I knew that my mission was now to take care of her, to be there for her. And thank goodness for my husband and that secretary I had hired, because I realized she wasn't there to help me from the summertime. She was there to help me during this season when I could totally just invest in being there for my mom. And unfortunately, my mom's, it was not a good diagnosis. It was a rare cancer. The treatment, she did 1 chemo treatment. It's like, I don't want to do this. So we knew it was a matter of time. And, my husband allowed me this freedom to just go there. And I literally pretty much moved in with my parents late that fall and spent most of the holidays with her. My husband and kids came out for Christmas. She ended up passing away on January 8th, 20 years ago, which blows my mind. It's been 20 years. And I did go into a depression after that. And looking back, and it's interesting, since you and I talked initially, I've been talking to my husband, it's like, what did it look like for you? Because we don't talk about it. And maybe it goes back to that shame or just like you're taught, just, toughen up. I come from, my mom's from a farming family.
I hear this a lot. It's in the past.
Yeah. And I, looking back, I didn't realize how much of a depression I actually went into for a full year, that I really just existed.
What did
and
depression
went on bare
look like
minimum.
for you, Sheri?
For me, I shut down. For me, it's a shutdown. Like, I don't want to get out of bed. I really just existed I was a zombie. I really just became the zombie of, I had to function. I had 3 boys who relied on me. I was trying to run a business, do all the things. But I did seek out, I went to, a hospice, lose your parent counseling thing. I sought out therapy. I did a lot of that, but it still just became this existence for a year. And I just remember, even like in the direct sales realm, we were in the middle of re-earning a new car. Every 2 years, you requalify for a new car. And I remember the company calling, and they're like, we'll give you another month. We'll give you another month. Because I had a good reputation. I had worked hard. I'd built a great business. And I'm just like, I don't freaking care about a car right now.
Yeah.
Like, not going to happen. I don't care. And I just didn't care about anything that wasn't related to my immediate family. And then after I kind of came out of, actually, it was probably the way I came out of that whole depression was my husband got deployed again. So it's like, all right, Sheri, you gotta shake this off now. And I had some friends, going back and, like I said, looking at all the little puzzle pieces now, I remember little moments of friends of mine, just being there for me and kind of bringing me out of that, like, wait a minute, this is who you are. And helping me rediscover who I was as a person. So that was helpful. So I think, if you're going through a season like that, rely on your friends that can help you find yourself again. Like, that was important to me when I was ready for it.
I have a question for you. So, you're very successful in direct sales. 9/11 happens. Your husband gets deployed, and you're taking care of everyone. You're taking care of the kids. You're taking care of your entire business, which I know in direct sales at the level that you were at is a lot. And then you're taking care of your mom. And as you were sharing that, the question I had was, who was taking care of you? What were you doing during that time? We talk so much about self-care, and people get it wrong. They think self-care is washing your face and using special creams and getting your hair done and getting a massage. So self-care is, what am I doing to pour into my own bucket while I'm spending the time pouring into others, so my bucket doesn't deplete, because I can't give from nothing. So what were you doing during that time? If anything, maybe you weren't doing any self-care. Who was taking care of you during that time?
Definitely my husband. And I didn't realize. So friends, and probably not enough, it definitely was not enough. And that's probably why I stayed in that funk season for longer than maybe I should have. I don't know, it's interesting. So, and to be honest, Stacey, it's like those seasons, besides the significant little moments, it's all a big blur for me. Like, it really is. Like, I don't even, like I said, it's been interesting talking to my husband recently about things. He's like, yeah, I remember this. I'm like, don't remember that at all. Don't remember that at all.
That's a protective layer of the mind, So you went through this really hard season. You went through this deep depression, which was eye-opening for you, because I'm assuming you had never experienced that kind of deep depression before, right? If anything, you were kind of on the opposite, overachieving, always showing up with a smile, getting everything done, being the person that everyone could rely on. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Right. So
definitely.
you've gone from like one extreme of the spectrum to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Your husband gets deployed again. You're still in that business at a very high level. How do you go and why do you go from there to now being a coach that helps people find their life missions? Are you even still in the direct sales anymore?
Technically, I'm still a consultant. I retired as a sales director a few years ago. But interesting, once he came back, I actually did, from that second deployment, I was able to get back to who I was and to find myself again. And actually, as our kids got older, it freed me up that I actually found more success within the company. And I found myself back in that full blown and achieving the things and thought I was extremely happy with that. Like I really thought where I was where I was going to stay forever and just keep climbing higher and higher. So it was several years after that season before I made the decision to leave it. Because like I said, that was 20 years ago that all that was happening. And I only made the decision to leave the direct sales realm as a sales director 5 years ago.
So for people that are not familiar with direct sales, if people follow me, they know I'm recording this January 13th, 2023. So at this point, I've been with a direct sales company for 7 years. I've had great success, but I felt that I had my most passion in that business when I was helping other distributors, other consultants overcome the mindset hurdle of all of the nonsense and all of the negative self-talk that would happen when somebody was trying to build a business, whether it was failure, fear of failure, fear of success, most of the time, fear of other people's opinions, fear of judgment, self-judgment. There were so many little things that were always popping in that I always felt was the thing that determined somebody's success or not. Because we all have the same access to the same materials, the same products, the same history, the same everything. In that way, it's a very level playing field. But what's not level in the playing field is our own personal lived experiences that we bring into it that tells us whether or not achieving in this business is available to us. Right. So I loved coaching people on that. And that's really where it sparked my passion and my curiosity and interest to move into coaching as a business, because I could see the effects and I could see the positive effects. And it wasn't about the sales. It was about the personal development for the person. Right.
100%.
I know the level that you were at within your direct sales. Why would anybody retire from that?
Yeah, I often ask myself that. But it goes back, part of it goes back to my mom, because again, she was 58 and my parents, I always say they lived their life fast. So my father was military. He was career military. So he retired at age 40.
Yeah.
So my parents had 18 years of quote unquote retirement life, where they did travel. They had my sister and I young. So they had grandkids. They experienced so much life between 40 and when she was 58. And I often think that, oh my goodness, what if my mom had been that traditional person that's going to work this job until they're 58, 60 years old. Then when I retire, that's when I get to enjoy life. That's when I get to travel. That's when I get to do all the hobbies and things I love to do. That's when I'll spend more time with my grandkids and do all those things. And that has always just stuck in my head, like since, I was 36 years old. And and I know I'm getting sidetracked on the question you asked. I'll come back to that in a minute,
Okay.
but that has always just been there. And that's kind of my driving force on helping people. And I knew, and like you, it's the coaching piece of when I had new team members. I loved helping them shift their mindset to see their possibilities, to see all that they could have. But that piece that was frustrating in that coaching in direct sales is a lot of times you get people that sometimes they're just joining for, I called it the girlfriend's club. Sometimes they're joining for just to get a little better. Sometimes they're joining for different reasons. And honestly, it got exhausting for me. There was so many pieces of it that just got exhausting. And I also found that, I was just coming off of my best year ever. So I had this whole comeback season from that, those 5 years of, because things went down. I mean, no, if you don't work, things are going to go down. And it's been a year of not working, really. I maintained, I didn't lose everything, right, but it wasn't where it was. So we had to build back up again. And so we're back, we're higher than ever, just came off of this most successful year, reached the pinnacle of what I thought was it, making it. And I remember saying to a friend of mine who was also in direct sales, we were like power partners. We walk, we're local to each other, so we'd walk. And I just remember saying to her, is it ever enough?
Right.
Is this ever going to be enough? Because we just finished the year. Yay, we did all these things. Now we're back to the beginning of a new year and we're back to zero.
Right.
Zero.
Right.
It's starting over again. And I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore. So that was the beginning mindset I had. And that was like 5 years ago of this, like, I don't know. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday. And it was like at that moment that I started peeking outside of the curtain.
Right.
Of what else is out there? Because I've been in this curtain, I've been in this space for so long that I thought this was it for me. Then now all of a sudden I'm like, wait, let's look around. Is there something else I need to find out there?
Okay. So I have to ask this. So I have a couple of things going through my head. Number one is it ever enough? That's such a big one because I think when you're in any business, it doesn't have to be direct sales. When you're in any business and you're highly successful, it's very seducing and very easy to attach our value to how well we do something, and we lose sight of who we are as a person. It becomes secondary, maybe even tertiary.
Yeah,
and so when you're constantly on the hamster wheel of hit the next goal, hit the next goal, hit the next goal, and then you're learning, that feels like burnout because you're like, is it ever going to be enough? Like, can't I just enjoy this and actually maybe not grow and just say, hey, I'm happy with where I am and not feel the pressure? And it doesn't have to be external pressure. It's internal pressure. Oh, what will people 100%. Think of me if I take my foot off this pedal now?
Yep.
Right. Yep. So there becomes this disconnect, even though it's so good on so many personal development levels, there becomes this disconnect with who you actually are, even though you're learning so much about yourself. It's kind of this weird oxymoron because you're getting so much validation and so much external praise and so much external recognition. It's like a drug. And so now you're chasing the dragon every month, every quarter, right? Oh my God, it's the end of the month, 31st. Holy shit, we did it. Oh my God, back to zero.
Yep.
How am I going to do that again? How am I going to do that again? How am I going to do that again? And now this becomes the focus and just being happy, content, and all the other things with the success gets lost in the mix.
Right. Exactly. I just did a podcast for my Discovering Your Calling show, and it was all on identity. And part of that is how we do, like what you just shared, Stacey, of that we do get so tied up in the title and that becomes our identity.
Or the level,
of who
right?
we are. yeah, the level, the title, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter if you're in, network marketing, direct sales. My husband felt it as a firefighter in corporate. We all can fall into that, and we forget who we are at our core.
Right.
And that's what matters most. What are we designed to do? And who are we without the title?
That is the key. That is the key, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, what you were talking about was when you're like, okay, and then I kind of peeked outside of the veil.
Uh-huh.
I think this is everywhere. I don't think it's just in direct sales. And I just had lunch a few months ago with a gal who just wrote a book about her experience of being a very, very, very high level executive at Goldman Sachs. So first of all, really hard to get to the top 1% of Goldman Sachs and then do it as a woman in a misogynistic environment, nearly impossible. And she talked about the gaslighting that was happening within Goldman Sachs, where people were like, you'll never be anything outside of here. Don't ever even think about leaving. You'll make the biggest mistake of your life if you leave. And you'll never, ever have it better than you have it here. I'm going to treat you like shit. It's very narcissistic. It's like narcissistic abuse. I'm going to treat you like shit. You're going to bust your ass because I'm going to throw so much money in your face. You can't comprehend that you're even making as much as you are. And by the way, when you leave, you'll never make it again. And there's nothing better for you other than what's here. And so she bought into that. And she was in it for 20 years. And she said she really had to reprogram and deprogram herself when she left. She didn't realize all that messaging she had bought it. Yeah. And so when she was ready to leave, there was a lot of shame associated with leaving. So obviously that's not a direct sales model. And I wanted to use that example because it does happen everywhere. But was there a part of you that was like, well, I can't leave?
Yes, totally.
I should feel bad that I'm even looking outside of this.
Right.
Why would I do that? I've told everybody this is the best thing since French bread.
Right.
And now I'm going to walk.
Totally. And I feel like that scenario you just shared, I think that happens on a much softer, quieter level. So it's not quite as in your face as her story, but it's there.
It's like there, that undercurrent. What does that messaging look like to you? What was it that was there? What was the sense?
Right. Kind of what you just said, that why would I leave this? I've been telling everybody this is the greatest thing. And what about my team? That was a huge thing for me. What about my team? What's going to happen with them? They've relied on me, which is pretty ego driven.
I had
to think that people need us. It's a lot of ego thoughts there. I remember my mentor, senior, she was retired by then, but I just remember her, she loved me, but yet there were definitely those, like I said, in a much softer version of what the woman you were speaking about heard, but there was still those little, and again, it might be the way we receive it. It may not even be what was being
an interpretation layer to it. There's no question, but part of it's based on the messaging.
Yeah. And I ever remember, so once I made the decision, there were some other factors playing in there. One, again, looking ahead, knowing my husband was going to be retiring in 3 to 5 years. It's like I knew that the model of the direct sales world really was not going to fit our life of what we wanted and the freedom that we wanted. So there was little pieces like that. There was also just some internal things with the company I wasn't happy with. So there was a lot of little pieces out there that made the decision. But going back to that, that thought of, so on my recording, my voicemail, we never listen to our own voicemail, right? So we forget to change it.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember my mentor calling me one day, and this was there, and I gave a year. So I announced that I was retiring as a leader in a year at the end of our physical year. So it was during that year. And of course, because I'm not investing, we're dipping down, we're not hitting the numbers we were, because I really wasn't mentally investing into it. I was doing minimal. And it still said that, and, it doesn't really matter, but, that you've reached the voicemail of Sheri Miter, Pink Cadillac Sales Director, and her message back to me was, "Oh, I really wish you still were."
God. Oh my God. I have so much thought about that. Oh my God. But that's kind of the whole point. I'm still the same person. I am me.
Right.
I am that person.
Yeah.
I'm no different because I don't have the car anymore.
Right.
And I think this is kind of the whole point, is people associating, and then this is going to get us into how you're working with people now, but people associating who they are, and I'm saying this very purposefully, versus what they've achieved. You are not what you achieve. And that's what gets so lost. Who would I be without that?
Right.
Who would I be? Right?
Yeah. That's what keeps people stuck.
This is what you and I were talking about before we started recording, which is if. This is the if. If you're going into any role, any working role, with a void of self-confidence, self-worth, self-love, self-belief, and you were quickly doused with a fire hose of constant accolade and praise, it is going to be very seducing. And then when you tie money to it, and titles and achievements and rewards, it's almost like you're sucked in, and it takes a tremendous strength to pull yourself out and say, I'm more than this. I'm more than this. I'm not this stuff. I am Sheri. I'm not the Pink Cadillac director.
Right.
I'm Sheri Miter. Mom, wife, bright woman, compassionate, many things. This is just how I've been making a living. And this is where I've been putting my effort. And I have a sign in my office that says, what are you doing to create an impact today? And one of my sayings is, you can make an income by making an impact. Right?
It's so funny because mine's impact over income.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You can be making an impact. And I think you and I probably had very good impact on people. This was the part that I loved the most. It wasn't about the sales per se. It was how I was making other people what I can help them recognize within themselves.
Right.
But there is a huge dichotomy within all businesses, not just direct sales. I want to make that so clear.
Right.
Where people really get sucked in to, and this book, it was called Bully Market, by Jamie Fiore Higgins, where she describes how she got so sucked into getting the title and getting the bonus, and she was being abused and miserable, but had to achieve it because in her case, her family, who was like first generation here from Italy, was like, you are the family success. She had all this weight she was carrying about having to hit it, not for all the money and the title, but for the fact that she graduated college and she made this tremendous name for herself. And there was some pride just within the entire extended family about that.
Yeah. So how do you walk away from that?
And then you have
how do you walk away from that?
I'm actually more than this. And I have to start setting boundaries, and I have to stop worrying about what other people think. And I have to stop people pleasing. And I have to ask myself, why am I really doing this? Why am I really doing this when I'm not happy? Which I think is a perfect segue into how you're working, what it is that you decided to do by becoming, tell me what it is. You're a Gallup-certified strengths coach. And you were sharing with me earlier, it's really about talking to people who maybe are really unhappy where they are professionally and helping them move into what is passionate for them, right?
Right, right. So that's what I do today. And it took, again, it's all a journey. It's all a journey. Nothing happens overnight. Like I said, about 5 years ago, I realized I needed this change, peeked out of the curtain. When COVID hit in 2020, I just inadvertently just started, I'm a very strategic thinker. So I just started talking to friends of mine that own businesses. One was a wedding planner, and just like, hey, have you thought about doing this, this, and this, to keep her business alive during COVID? And it was my husband who saw this and was like, that's your new business. He knew I was open to searching. And so I started off doing that. I ended up becoming a certified strengths coach in 2021 because ironically, it was knowing, and if you're not familiar with what Clifton Strengths is, it's owned by Gallup. Some people know it as Strengths Finders. It's an assessment that tells you what your natural talents and strengths are. It's your talent DNA. And it's so unique. It's so very personalized. I obsessed with it. And I had used it in direct sales to become successful. One of our corporate people was going around training with it. So it helped me become successful in direct sales, but yet at the same time, it was also knowing my natural talents and strengths was another one of those pieces that made me realize, wait, if I stay here, I'm not going to use these natural talents and strengths that I have. They're getting wasted here. They're not needed. Well, they were needed, but I wasn't willing to hustle enough to use them. The hustle was over. I was in my 50s, no more hustling. So that was a piece of what I wanted to do. And it took me 3 years of just kind of testing and trying and like, wait, do I want to work with this person or do I want to work with this person? No, I like working with this person. And it finally all fell into a place this summer. And my calling is helping others find their calling. And it all ties back into, again, that thought that I had when my mother passed away is life is short and we are not promised tomorrow. So why on God's earth would you spend 20, 25, 30 years of your life working in a job you don't even like? Even if you are having the titles and the pay and all that. And if you're not using your God-given gifts and talents, that's what causes burnout. That's what causes stress.
Well, because you're not in alignment with your truth. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, I feel like that's where burnout comes from so often, not all the time. And so would you find that, I'm sure you could rattle off like a top 3 reasons why someone wouldn't leave a job. But my question is one of those top 3, the fact that somebody's like, I mean, Jesus, I just put in 20 years to this place or 30 years or 50. I mean, I've just given it so much time. I have to just see it through to the end, like as though it's like this predetermined, made up end. And sometimes if you're, say, a teacher, there's like how long you've been invested in a pension, like, certain organizations will hook you in. My supervisor from my trauma recovery coaching and someone that I use as a coach option for myself is my favorite gal in the world, Dr. Jay Belton. She was a school psychologist. She has a PhD, turned trauma recovery coach. She left school psychology before her pension would be fully vested because she was so disheartened by what was happening in the public schools. This is down in Maryland. But it takes a very special person when you're vested with these kinds of programs, right? Retirement programs, to say, my mental health and my emotional health are bigger than the extra money I'll make if I stay.
Right, right. And I think that is such a personal, there is no right or wrong decision there. Like that has to be each person's personal decision, whether it it makes sense to leave or not. Sometimes it makes sense to stick it out. But what can happen, and this is, I have one of my clients I'm working with right now in my Discovering Your Calling program. She's the vice president of a global tech company, and she has 3 years left before she can retire. So by us working together, it's twofold. So I always start by helping people figure out, well, like, what are your natural talents and strengths? That's the first thing we do. And we spend a lot of time on that. And then there's other steps we go through. But by her tapping back into, she was familiar with Clifton Strikes, but never really never had coaching around it. So we've tapped into that. And it's been great because it's helping her. She's planning for that 3 years. Like, what am I going to do when I do have this time and freedom? And that's just giving her excitement again. You know, when it's like Christmas, you know, when we start or better yet, when we have a vacation planned.
Yeah.
The anticipation of the vacation sometimes is even more fun than the vacation itself.
Mm-hmm.
So she's now in this mode of anticipating this exciting next step for her. But at the same time, by going through the talents and strengths, we're also working on, because some of her, she loves pieces of what she does, but other pieces are very toxic. So it's helping her deal with today.
Yeah.
And she's happier today by the strategies that we've come up with.
I call that with my clients the reframe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we also I often talk about this concept of remain, reframe, release. And sometimes I'm working on that if someone's coming to me in a toxic relationship with another person, but it could be a relationship with work. It could be a relationship with a habit that they have. It could be used in a lot of different ways, but the reframe is so powerful because you're like, okay, I've made the decision. I'm actually going to remain here for these 3 years for all of these different reasons, but I need to shift the way that I'm approaching this and the mindset I have towards it and the language that I'm using to create the story around it. So I'm happier because the circumstance isn't going to change. No, but if I'm choosing to stay in the circumstance, right?
Yeah.
I need to shift all the other pieces around it.
Right. So for her, that's the solution. You know, she doesn't want to give up this 3 years that she has and the retire. You know, she's got a lot laying there. Not that it's all about money, but sometimes it is, you know, and the security. So for her, that makes sense, but let's make it happier. Let's make it more palatable now. And again, it's just by her having this anticipated thing that she's going to step into. It's made life more exciting for her. But then I have another client that she's like, I can't do this any longer. Like, help me get out of this as soon as possible. Because her mental health, her everything in her life is just weighing down because she's just so unhappy in her current position. So for her, it's more like, I don't care what I'm giving up. I just need out.
Yeah.
So there's no, again, right or wrong to that scenario. It's all, and it's also on, I think, our risk.
Like some people are more risk adverse than others.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has to be that personal. You know, I would never tell somebody, "Oh, quit your job today and go," you know, start
but
something new.
I think what you do is so important because I think we have been trained at a very young age to follow these paths that maybe we do or do not have choice in. I'm watching this experience right now with my 18-year-old, right? He's a senior. What's the natural path? You're going to go to college. And I'm looking around going, you could do that. He's gotten into some really great schools and he's gotten into schools he would love to attend. But are you really ready? And do you want to take some time? And he's like, Mike, those are options. And I'm like, there's always options. But, you know, I tend to be the cycle breaker for most things, right? I tend to be the alternative out of the box person. And I'm saying to him, well, what path do you want to be on? He
Right.
can't answer that. It's almost better if you say, listen, you don't have options. This is your only option. Just go forward. But because I'm giving him options, he's almost like, he's afraid to make the wrong decision. And I keep telling him, you're not going to make the wrong decision. You're going to make a decision and you're going to see how it goes. There's no definitiveness to it's right or wrong. It's just part of the process, right? But we are kind of programmed and indoctrinated to say we're going to go to college and then we're going to go and get a job and you're going to get a well-paying job and you're going to get a well-paying job with a good title and then you're going to have a family and then you're going to do this and that. And we got away from what do we want? You know, how many people, when I go back to this gal that wrote this book, she's like, all I ever wanted to do was be a social worker. But I did really well on the aptitude test for Goldman Sachs. And they told me, my parents told me, you'll never make enough money as a social worker. And, you know, her family struggled. They first generation here was really tough, like a lot of immigration stories. And so she kind of did what she felt was best for everyone else and negated what she wanted, because sometimes we're not in environments where that's really valued. And so we really disconnect quickly with my needs matter and what I want matters. And so now what, you're 40, 50, 60. And now as a coach, you're saying, well, what do you want? People don't understand. There's a lot of people that cannot answer that question.
Right. Or all the opportunities. To me, that's the thing is like, you know, when you step into and that's the thing too, when you take that first step, whatever that may be, towards something else, it's amazing what starts to open up. And I think back to like, even just when I peeked behind, you know, opened up that curtain to say, wait, there's a whole nother world out there. There's so much possibilities.
Right.
It's crazy, you know, and the more I'm stepping into this, discovering your calling and, you know, and hearing people's stories, the things people do to make a living, there's some really crazy stuff out there that people are doing, but they're so freaking happy. They're so happy.
Kind of the point, you know? I love following Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you follow Gary at all. He goes by Gary V on social media, but he's, you know, a serial entrepreneur, has become incredibly successful financially, early investor in a lot of big companies. He's done very well financially. People would see him as being incredibly successful by business standards. But his whole mission is to talk about none of that shit matters if you're not happy.
Right.
And he's on a mission of making sure that people are in alignment with what they want, because there's no such thing as success if you're miserable.
Absolutely. 100%.
And that if you're in your flow and you're actually doing the things that light you on fire, the rest of it will naturally come because you're in your flow. When you're in your flow, you can be so much more creative, so much more strategic. Everything's just firing 1,000 times better because you're literally flowing with what is meant to be, because you're in alignment with your authentic self.
Yep, exactly. And that's what, 100%, like all that, Stacey, because, and that's where like the strengths, when you know your natural talents and strengths and you're using them, that's how you get in flow.
100%.
You're in flow when you're using your natural talents.
You know, so often when I talk to clients that come to me that are experiencing sensations like anxiety and overwhelm and burnout and stress and very often leading to physical manifestations of autoimmune and what have you, you know, I'm trying to kind of get underneath the hood and trying to figure out who are they authentically and are they in alignment with who they are authentically? Because very often they're not. Very often they're in deep people-pleasing mode, lack of boundary setting mode, over prioritizing everybody else's need, deprioritizing their own, Because this is kind of what we've been taught this many, many times. Oh, don't miss Bobby's birthday party at 5 years old because he'll be so sad if you don't show up. Maybe your 5-year-old's just really fucking tired and doesn't want to go.
Yeah, he doesn't care, right?
It doesn't matter. But those little nuances tell somebody what I want isn't valued. I need to put somebody else's needs first.
Right.
And it's really, it's such a covert message, and it's not intentionally malicious, but it is the beginning of the lack of boundary setting of what do you want? What do you want? And if we don't ask this really young, when you're 40, 50, 60 years old and somebody's coming to you to work with you, Sheri, they don't know how to answer it. Because they've never been allowed to decide what it is that they want. We've been taught it's selfish, it's vain, it's self-centered. There's been so much messaging around it, but we also have the highest rate of anxiety and depression ever. And what I find is so often people are deeply out of alignment and they don't even know what they want. So like you were saying earlier, it's almost like, okay, let's dump out all the puzzle pieces. They're upside down. There's no box. There's no picture. But somehow together, I'm going to ask you the right questions to go find these missing puzzle pieces.
Yes.
And allow you the safe space to get comfortable with authentically aligning yourself to what is. So then you can get comfortable with sharing it with other people and not worrying about their opinions of it.
Right. Exactly. And
the
even
big load.
Flipping over, and I'm just imagining too, and we were just doing a puzzle with my granddaughters, and, my 6-year-old granddaughter, she's like, I'm going to smash this piece. I'll make it fit.
Because it has
but you know what? But that's part of, and I'm just, as I was listening to you, it's like, that's kind of almost, because I always look at everything as an experiment. I always tell my clients, like, everything's an experiment. So go, because you don't know what you want, go try something. And if you feel like you're smashing the puzzle piece in, that's the wrong fit.
But
so
that's kind
not
of the
right
point.
direction, but you tried it. So
this is where I see a lot of the anxiety coming in, because we've also been told not to make mistakes, that mistakes are negative, that mistakes equal failure. And look, I'm happy to drop an F-bomb here and there, but like there just are few words that really grate me, like a Parmesan cheese grater, and one is should and the other is failure. Because it's nonsense. When people say this should be happening and it shouldn't be happening, based on what? It's happening. The universe, God, whatever you believe in, has presented it. Stop fighting it.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're supposed to like it, but this is the natural course of the flow of what's happening. And every single time you go up against it and start saying it shouldn't be, you're going to be fighting and resisting the energy flow of what is happening. And that actually will cause an energy shift and a lot of anxiety. But the also is getting messy and playing and trying to figure it out. Because we've also been taught, do it right. Do it right the first time. Don't make mistakes. Failure is a bad thing. Failure is just trying something out and realizing that one didn't fit. That one, that's not the right one. Next, I learned this about myself, or I learned this about whatever. Next, it's just whoever created the word failure, bad. Because it puts so much unnecessary, really false priority and importance on something that doesn't exist. We're supposed to be making mistakes all the time because we're supposed to be trying new things all the time. I actually had somebody tell me once they've never made a mistake. Now, it wasn't, there are no mistakes and everything's just life. And life is a series of mess. That's not the message that it was coming through. It was, I've never done anything that's not perfect. And I was like, wow,
Wow.
you're going to, and this was about 15 years ago. I remember thinking to myself, that person's going to have a nervous breakdown. Because that's actually impossible.
Yeah.
Right?
I can't. That doesn't even comprehend in my
it's
brain.
A false
like, wait.
But it's either you're lying to yourself because you're afraid to admit that you've made mistakes.
Right. Or you've lived in such a small little bubble. Like, which one is it? Are they lying, or they've lived in this tiny little bubble that they're scared to step out of? I knew it was
one of them. And I just thought to myself, I never get judgmental. I get curious. I go, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder where that person's going to lie. Like, where's that going to land that person? That's the human experience. So. Right. I want to.
And I can't remember who. Just on the failure, I can't remember who it was. Somebody like you'd probably know the name, like a Darren Hardy, somebody famous. I remember him. No, it wasn't him, but anyway, it doesn't matter who it was. But they would sit down at their dinner table with their kids every day, and they asked their kids, "What did you fail at today?"
The best.
And that was their goal for the day, is to try something and fail. Yeah, because if you do that, eventually you'll succeed.
And by the way, you'll learn, the word
fail, but it was the same idea.
You'll learn more about yourself, and you'll learn what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah. It's all a big experiment. Life is a big experiment.
Yeah.
So experiment, figure out what works, what doesn't, what feels good, what's in alignment, what fills your cup, what gives you joy, what gives you passion, all those things.
Yeah. And those things have never been made to be the priority. And I think that's where we're starting to flip that, right? So let me tell you guys where you can find Sheri. First of all, she has this Yes, My 5 to Thrive guide. Where can they find that? Is that on your website?
It actually is not on my website yet. My website's getting redone. Okay. So good. But I will give you the link, and if you can put that in the show notes.
So we're going to put into the show notes the 5 to Thrive guide. Share with people really quickly what the 5 to Thrive guide is. Yes.
So basically, it's your personal navigational guide it's the beginning of knowing your talents and strengths. Okay. Whether you've taken the Clifton Strengths Assessment or not, you can get value from it. And it's 5 quick points that if you are any one of the 34 talent themes, and you can kind of guess what they are based on the way the guide's set up. What you need to naturally thrive, what kind of environment you need, what frustrates you, what it lights you up, so it's these 5 quick bullet points that you can just use. There's a great quote card for each one. It's very inspiring, but also just a quick little oh, why am I getting frustrated? Let me go back and look. Oh yeah, that's why I'm getting frustrated today. Cause this need is not being met. Or what do I need to create to thrive? I need to make sure I create this environment for myself. So it's a really handy tool. It's beautifully well done by my graphic designer. She was over the top on this, the way it says, and it comes with a little mini video training that I do along with it that'll hit your inbox.
I might have one of my kids do that. I might do it myself. All right. So can I give people your website? Well, is it just in the process of being updated?
Yeah. So some of the things may or may not make sense. There's a lot on there right now, but yes, it's just, sherimiterco.com is the website.
And so for people that are listening and not looking at the show notes, I'm just going to spell out your name. So it's www.sherimiterco.com. It's SHERIMITERCO.com. I can tell you, I've worked with a lot of people in the past, and Sheri's passion for serving this way and helping people, is powerful to me, because you're really helping people harness their happiness, and I think given what happened with your mom and the fact that she did pass so early, and thank God she was in an environment where she actually got a chance to experience retirement, which would be really unusual. Right? To die at 58 and to have had 18 years of that kind of freedom. That was a really special gift. But I can see how that experience would have had a very powerful impact on you helping people make sure that they're living their best life while they have it. Because as you said, tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Exactly.
No, we have done full circle here, my friend. This is, we've touched
we covered
all
a lot,
things.
a lot.
We've touched all the things in a short period of time. So again,
yes.
It's Sheri Miter, MITER.com. All the information will be in the show notes. And, we love doing this podcast. If you know somebody that you think would be a great guest, I'm always open to hearing from it. You can just go to my website, which is flipyourmindset.com. Drop me a note on that. But this episode and all episodes can be found wherever you find your podcasts. I happen to listen to mine on Spotify. Some people use Apple. I also use Castbox on my phone. But wherever you get your podcasts, you can go find Flip That Shit. And we're just really grateful that you stuck with us the whole time. So thank you so much, Sheri, for being my guest today. It's been a really amazing talk.
Thank you for having me, Stacey.
Of course.